So at the beginning of September I did a review video which I'll try and put a link to up there for the Army Painter Mega Brush paint set, and I said what I was going to do was, I reviewed them fresh out of the box and said I was going to use them a lot during the following month and report back on how they performed and what I thought of the set. And I made some predictions about what I thought I'd be doing, and I'll let you know how that panned out. So here I am, and here are the brushes. And the first thing is, no regrets. I am really glad I bought this set. It's performed extremely well. There are some heroes, there are some less exciting things, so I'll go through them, and there are a couple of other things that I did with these brushes that I will tell you about. So first thing was, my suspicion was that these two brushes, the Regiment brush and the Character brush, were going to be my principal tools of choice, with the Regiment brush doing most of the work on base coating and washes, and the Character brush doing most of the work on detail. So the first thing I have to say is I wasn't 100% correct with that, and in fact if you look closely at these brushes you'll probably see where my emphasis lay, because you can see that these have discoloured. The white of the brushes have discoloured here, here, because I used the detail brush a great deal more than I expected to. I found that the flow of paint from the Character brush, whilst it's fine, it wasn't quite good enough for the really finicky little detail. And so when it came to doing those dots on eyes, or those tiny little eyelids, or hand-painted freestyle letters or symbols, I tended to start going for the detail brush. And I do a fair amount of that stuff, so you can see that these have been discoloured. I should say they haven't been discoloured because I've been dipping them that deep in the paint. It's just that I wash them in clean paint water more often than not, but the paint water gets dirty. I do dry them off, but the water has just kind of discoloured the grips here, and you can see the same sort of discoloration over here on the small dry brush, which tells you how much I use the dry brushes, which is a great deal. These I found to be a really good addition to the set. Large dry brush has been my brush of choice for large bases, so dry brushing bases at 40mm and above. The small dry brush for 25mm and smaller bases, and for any focus dry brushing on a miniature. That's been a really good performing brush. The terrain stroke vehicle brush has been a little bit of is it disappointment the wrong word? This is definitely, you can see the colour of this brush has changed. Now I have treated this brush no differently to the others. In fact, I've used it a good deal less than these, but the discoloration comes. So I am certain now that this brush is a synthetic brush and these brushes are not synthetic. And that's the discoloration, and it's also really seen a lot of splaying within the brush, and actually I wouldn't rate this brush as highly as the older bristle brushes that I showed you, that I still have, that I showed you in the last video. So I've still got those, and I've been tending to favour those. I did use this brush quite a lot, but I was quite unhappy with its performance generally. I think I would only use it for dry brushing very large areas like buildings. It would probably be my only choice. Even for stippling, it wasn't that good a performing brush. So this is the most disappointing brush in the set. Dry brushes are great. These three are the workhorses. I did go to the insane detail brush maybe twice. I am yet to use the Psycho at the bottom here. I've come up with nothing that needed the Psycho. But of all of these brushes, one of them has practically changed my life, and that is this one. So I expressed some scepticism over exactly how much better the Masterclass brush was going to be than these other detailed brushes. This is the only Kolinsky sable brush in the set. Obviously, we've all heard about Kolinsky sable in this hobby, and people will say many great things about it. I thought I had used Kolinsky sable brushes before, but possibly I hadn't. Possibly I'd just used sable brushes and not Kolinsky sable. I think I'd always been quite sceptical about what the difference was, but this brush has changed my life. This has I didn't use it for half of the month because I wanted to give these brushes a really good try, and then I had to paint a character piece that was going to be quite challenging, and so I thought this is the chance to break out the Masterclass brush, and I mean its performance absolutely blew me away. The ease of the flow and the application of the paint to the miniature was transformative. This is a great set. Nothing wrong with this set. If you are painting at competition level, if you are going out there to win prizes, you need a Kolinsky sable brush. Whether it's this one or one you get from somewhere else, I don't care. I don't think you need a whole set of Kolinsky sable. I think that would be totally pointless. But for the application of fine detail and for working on the subtle gradations of light and dark that you need to really bring out the qualities of a high quality miniature, I am only slightly exaggerating when I say this brush changed my life. However, I also spent the month trying out two other new things. The first thing you're probably familiar with. So I'm just going to move these aside now that we've looked at those. This stuff here is brush soap. Now there's lots of different versions on the market. You'll hear a lot about different brands of brush soap. I went online and I found basically the cheapest reasonable brand of brush soap I could, which was the Masters Brush Cleaner and Preserver. So it looks like that. You can see it's been well used inside, and I have been carefully using this brush soap on my brushes after I've finished with them. So every time I finish with a brush, when I'm putting it away, first thing I do is I wet it, put some on the brush of the soap on it, wet it again, wipe any surplus soap off, and then put the brush aside. And this, whether it's made a difference, obviously I haven't done a control group of brushes that I haven't been cleaning. I've just been cleaning all of them. But by comparison to other brush sets that I have used, and I've used these brushes very intensively this month, the brushes from Army Painter have certainly kept their tips, kept their springiness and their consistency, and haven't gunked up with paint the way other brushes have. And I would say that the use of brush cleaner on your brushes, if you're going to spend money on your brushes, is a good idea. It will save you money and it will preserve your brushes longer term. So that was the second thing that I learned this month. Now the last thing is this. So when I wanted to get some new brushes, I'm going to put those aside now. When I wanted to get some new brushes, I wanted to get a new brush holder. And I had a good look around at all of the various companies that make, MDF paint holders and such like, to see if there was anybody making what I wanted. Nobody was. So I looked at various different ideas of how I could do this, and I looked at the tools and equipment that I had. I'm very cheap. I didn't want to go out and buy stuff. I had an old pallet sitting outside my back door, so I took a piece off that and I cut it up with a handsaw, and I got these 4 pieces of wood. I went round to my mum's house and raided her sewing kit because I didn't have any in my sewing kit, and I got this strip of old white elastic. And these nails here, they're cable tie nails, tacks I should say, rather than nails, and I've just nailed them into place. There are screws at the top and bottom either end, and so what this is a brush holder. So the brush goes like that. And obviously I keep the brushes in order along there, and that holds the brush. Now, the important thing with this one is that because I got screws in either end there, that when I'm not using the brushes, they point down like this, and then the tips apparently are preserved. It stops any water that's left in the brush, although there shouldn't be any. It stops it from running down under the ferrule and drying there. But when I'm using the brushes, obviously it's quite hard to get the brush out when it's just pointing down. So when I'm using the brushes, this rotates upwards, and I can pull the brush out when I need it and tuck it away when I'm not. And this has been my other addition to the set. So I keep all of the main expensive brushes in the brush holder, and I could, in theory, add another strip of elastic along the back here to put some more brushes in if I wanted 2 sets. At the moment, I think I'm okay. So the final conclusion then on this video is that the Army Painter Mega Brush Set is a great investment of money. It does also merit a certain amount of investment of time then if you want to keep these brushes in good condition. Get yourself some brush soap, and I would recommend making yourself a brush holder. It's not that tricky. Took me about an hour all told from plank to finished, but I have a good supply of screws and nails and such like that I could dip into. If you don't, you might want to pop to your local hardware store, get yourself a strip of elastic. This needs to be quite tight across the end, and you could probably glue it, but I have screwed it in at either end to make sure it's really secure. This is a bodge job, and it's doing absolutely fine. I'm not a DIY master by any means. I think anybody with just about the right tools and a few of the right pieces of equipment could probably bodge this out of some scrap wood if you wanted to. That's it. Now, the other thing that I promised I was going to do in the last video is that I was going to turn the plastic container that these brushes came in into a wet palette. Now, I have got the foam, I've got the plastic box, I haven't yet got the baking paper that needs to go over the top. So once I've got that baking paper, I will make this, and I will come back with a how-to video on how to turn this box into a wet palette, so you get all of your brushes and a free wet palette to boot. All right, thank you very much, and I'll see you in our next video.